Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. Now I've lost my place. I've always been more interested in fiction novels rather than non-fiction. And I think it's mainly because I like to read more for escapism. I mostly read at night before I go to sleep. It's more of a way of kind of getting out of my head, getting out of whatever is going on with work or whatever, and it's like a complete reset, escaping to another world. I find that non-fiction tends to make my brain more active. It kind of gets me thinking and gives me ideas and motivates and inspires me, whereas with fiction it's more about being entertained and being lost in another world to kind of get out of my own head. This is what I'm currently reading, Shantaram, which is actually based on true events by Gregory David Roberts. It's a fantastic book, absolutely beautiful, and I've had it sitting on my shelf for years actually, and I finally got around to picking it up. You can actually see that there's the cover and there's the spine where it's completely faded from sitting around for so long, but I kind of wanted to be in the right headspace to read it, and then when I did pick it up just before Christmas, I fell into it straight away and immediately fell in love with it. So that's what I'm currently reading. I also went and got a couple of books about writing. I got this book, Plot Perfect, just because it was there in the writing section. I don't know if it's good or not. I haven't started it. That's not a bookmark. But this is the one that I really wanted to read. I actually ordered it in at the library, The Breakout Novelist. I haven't got very far through it yet because I just haven't really had much time to sit down and read it, but I did start, and there were a few typos in the introduction which was kind of frustrating because I get really easily put off by bad grammar and typos, so that was a bit frustrating. It's that in itself makes me think that I do not want any typos in my books. I'm just really particular about that. So hopefully it will be good. It looks as though it's got a lot of really good ideas and guidelines and examples of how to write a really engaging novel, which is actually more for the project that I want to work on after my current novel is published. I'm already starting to outline my next project, and I want it to be a page turner. I want it to be quite gripping and engaging, so that's why I'm starting to do some study for that. So I really believe that reading books is a practice just like anything else, where you actually need to practice at it to kind of keep up the skill of reading. Even though I've loved reading all my life, there were a fair few years where I just didn't make time to read, and when I did decide that I wanted to start reading again, it was really challenging. My attention was just so scattered and unfocused, almost like I just lost the ability to focus my attention on reading words on a page. So it took me a little while to get back into reading books, but then once you get back into the habit of it and doing it regularly, then it becomes addictive again, and especially if you do manage to pick up a few really good books that you just can't put down. I always keep track of the books that I've read. I just make a list of the title and the author and the date that I finished it, partly so I remember what I've actually read, and also just for the fun of keeping track of it. And I quite often set like a goal of how many books I want to try and read, just to make sure that I do keep up the habit of reading regularly. And the year before last, which was 2018, I set a goal of 38 novels, and by the skin of my teeth I did actually manage to read 38 books. And then last year, that was when I started writing. Well, I'd already started writing, but all of my spare time was taken up with writing instead of reading. So I actually only read, I think, maybe 5 books in the year, and it was sort of January, February, and then November, December. So I barely basically read anything. So then this year, I have set a goal of 20 books because it's 2020, and actually a lot of my measurable goals are based around the number 20. So I've already read 2 crime novels this year. They were just easy reading. The latest Jack Reacher, Lee Child book, and a David Baldacci book. Now I'm just trying to focus on reading the one fiction novel, which is Shantaram. And a few years ago, I realised I'd gotten into a really bad habit of buying books. Don't really know how that happened, but I would just see a book that I really liked, and especially if it was on sale, I would treat myself and buy that book, because there was just something really exciting about going into a bookshop and seeing something that looked really interesting and just buying it then and there on the spot. And really, it just doesn't make sense to go out and buy books. I mean, it's money unnecessarily spent, and with all the resources out there, ways of acquiring books, it was just indulgent. So I committed to myself, I think this was the year before last, and I committed to myself that I was not going to buy any more books. I could receive them as gifts, and I could borrow them from friends, and I could go to the library and get books out. And so I actually went and got a library card because I hadn't had one since I was at school, I think. I hadn't been to the library in so long. That worked really well. But then what I came to realise fairly recently is that I just have so many books here at home in big piles, on bookcases, all over the place, that I have never read. And they're fantastic books. I mean, I've never read them, but I know that they will be really good. I mean, like Shantaram. So I've actually had to ban myself from going to the library and getting books out, because I need to just read what I've actually got. So the first thing that I did was I gave back all the books that had been lent to me from friends, and there were heaps of them that friends had loaned me, recommending that I read them, and I'm sure they're great books, but I took note of what they were. I took photos, or I wrote a note on like a reading list, to be read reading list, and then I went and handed them all back. And then I, just over the summer break, I went through and quite ruthlessly sorted the books that I need to keep, that I really want to keep, and the books that I have never read and want to read, and then the books that I'm just hanging on for no good reason. And the thing is that I really believe that books are meant to be shared, and I had so many great books, but I just didn't need to hang on to them. I probably was never going to read them again. Often I was holding on to them because they had been gifted to me, so there's a lot of kind of sentimental value in that somebody had especially picked that book out for me and given it to me, but there was just no real need to actually just keep it when I'd already read it and enjoyed it and didn't feel the need to read it again. So those books that I really loved, I passed them on to friends who will also hopefully love them and keep sharing them around. And the ones that I just really didn't need anymore, I boxed them up into a box about this big, and today I went and took that to the hospice shop, and I bought myself a new bookcase because the one that I had was all the shelves had completely bowed, and the back was falling off it, and it was just I didn't really like the shape of it, and I just really wanted a new bookcase. And so now the books that I have are really just the ones that I can't part with for one reason or another, or just collections, favourites, and also books that I haven't read yet, which I will read next and try and get through all of the ones that I have in my bookcase. So let's go and have a look at what I've got. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Agatha Christie, and I have a very fine collection of Agatha Christie novels. I've actually read probably the majority of her books. My other favourite author is Stephen King, and I don't actually have as many books as I thought, but again, I have probably read the majority of his books. At the bottom I have cookbooks and reference and just some miscellany. If we come up here, this is kind of the crime section. I have not read this, I've not read this, I've not read this. Actually, I don't think I've read any of those. Ian Fleming, I love. I've liked all of Dan Brown's novels. They're just good for what they are. And of course, Edgar Allan Poe. I am a huge fan, especially now that I'm kind of getting into horror stories, horror writing. So I've got a couple of his there. Oh, and I used to love these 2-minute mysteries. I have some just contemporary fiction. Love the Rosie Project. A third of the way through that book. Haven't started this book, even though it's faded to oblivion. I will probably make that next on my list after Shantaram. All the Light We Cannot See, I am that far through. I'm kind of a fan of Jodi Picoult, if that's how you say her name. Hit or miss. Sometimes I like them. I find them very formulaic. I feel like the twists are often quite predictable, but this one was particularly good, My Sister's Keeper, and I quite often lend that to others. I've never read this book, and of course my beauties, Roald Dahl. These are the adult. Some of them are short stories, Boy and Going Solo, autobiographical, and of course they are great. But he wrote some really dark stories. Fantastic stuff, and this is the kind of stuff that I would absolutely love to write. It's really kind of dark fiction, bordering on mystery horror. These are classics. Jane Eyre. I first read that when I was about 12, I think, and I actually haven't read it since, so about time I read that again. A Town Like Alice, I absolutely love, by Neville Shute. The Diary of Anne Frank, I actually only read it recently. I know many people read it when they're at high school or whatever. Catcher in the Rye, one of my all-time favourite books. Lord of the Flies, I read that from time to time. I read it last year, I think. I read it again. Oscar Wilde, The Major Work. Yeah, it's about time I got into that again. Wuthering Heights. Now this is my ultimate favourite book, even though I'm not a fan of romance generally, but I can't get enough of Wuthering Heights. I came across it probably at a market or something. I think the same antique store that I bought my writing desk at in the South Seas, 1916, so that makes it 104 years old. And here's just some random ones. I need to finish this one. I really was enjoying it, and I think that's why I haven't finished it, because I really want to give it my full attention. I Am Malala. Again, it's beautifully written. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, talking about death, fantastic book. So I guess this is kind of my section for non-fiction. I obviously don't read a lot of non-fiction. Contemporary fiction, classics, crime Agatha Christie. I'm in the progress of organising my kids' books. But I've got some beauties here. Charlotte's Web, I mean, Roald Dahl, need I say more. Phantom Tollbooth is so cool. What is it? Oh, The Dot and the Line is fantastic as well. I can highly recommend that one. Margaret Mahy, New Zealand author, The Downhill Crocodile was very inspiring. Oh, Enid Blyton. I just absolutely love Enid Blyton books. The ones about fairies and goblins and so on, and also all the famous five. I grew up reading those. Still sorting through stuff. Tessa Duda, Alex, classic. Another Margaret Mahy. Oh, weirdly I have 2 Harry Potter books. I think that I might have bought the first one, or first wanted to get into Harry Potter, and then I think I must have borrowed all of the rest, but then when I got to the last one, I think I pre-ordered it so that I could read it before it got spoiled. Of course, as you can see, I am a massive fan of Tintin. I've got some really random books here that are sort of on the artier side of things. Think Big and Big Magic, of course, and the dictionaries. Edward Monckton, so open it randomly. The hoppy hoppy sparrow plants beautiful thoughts that grow like flowers in the blackness of space. Note, oh that the world were full of hoppy hoppy sparrows. What do you think, Raven? So now I'm really just hanging on to those books that I love and read over again from time to time, and the books that I have never read, and ones that I have for reference, and the ones that I will keep sharing with friends to encourage them to read them as well. So it might be worth looking at what you've got in your bookcase, or what you've got lying around, what you've borrowed from other people. Maybe write up a reading list if that makes it any easier for you to get through what you've got. It can often be quite daunting to pick up a book like this that just seems so long and the writing is so small, and you think, you know, it's such a big endeavour. Am I going to get into this book? Am I going to enjoy it? And the key is that even though I like to keep track of what I've read and I like to try and achieve however many books I set out to read, that's not the end game. That is not the objective. It's not about trying to get through to that last page and closing the book and saying, hey, I've read it. It really is about being immersed in the story, escaping to another world, and appreciating every page, every paragraph, every line, every word, and living another life through someone else's story. There's something quite magical about that, I think. If you do get that daunting feeling about how would I ever read a book that's as big as that, firstly, you don't have to push through something that you just can't get into. There is a point where you can go, you know, everyone else seems to like this book, but it's just not working for me, and just set it down, pick up something else, and enjoy a different book. Also, reading is a practice. It's something that if you're kind of out of practice, you may just need to get back into that headspace of focusing on black and white text. It's quite a different process for the mind than watching something on TV where the information is just displayed to you in pictures and sound and just this big overwhelm of noise. You know, this is a very, very different practice. And try and get out of that thought of having to just get to the end of the book. And I'm not a fast reader. I need to really focus on the words. I've never been able to speed read or skim through each page. I need to read it line for line to really take it in. Otherwise, I just find that I'm actually thinking about something else and my eyes are still moving down the page. I have to sort of go back and reread what I've supposedly just read. So it isn't about trying to power through these books and check them off your to-be-read list. You know, really take the time, read it slowly if that's how your brain absorbs the story, and just enjoy it, really enjoy it. So I'd love to know what you're reading right now, or what you've got on your to-be-read list. Is there something that you've read recently that you would recommend to others? This is one that I will most likely be recommending, Shantaram. It's just absolutely beautifully written. It's very poetic but also very engaging. So if you'd like to share, please comment on the video below, and I'd love to hear what you're reading right now.